And a very good evening to you, and you're welcome to a special edition of the GreenZone Conversations with Eugene Doyle. This is a follow-up to Sunday's program on the tragic death of Jason Arday. And I want to begin tonight by making something absolutely clear. Jason Arday's death was tragic. A family has lost a father, a partner, a son, a brother, and a friend. And the circumstances surrounding his death must be properly established through the appropriate processes. But tonight, we're asking a different question. What happens when legitimate scrutiny becomes labeled racism? Because that is what we are seeing now. The argument being presented by many of Arday's supporters is that scrutiny of his academic career was fundamentally a racist campaign. We've heard phrases such as racist feeding frenzy, institutional murder, racist witch hunt, and in the case of Nathan Hafnas, a race realist, and it claims that his death was a consequence of anti-Black racism. But let's stop for a moment. There are actually two separate questions here. Was there racism in some of the commentary surrounding Jason Arday? Possibly. Were some of the attacks excessive? Quite possibly. But does that mean the questions about his academic record, his appointment, and Cambridge University's due diligence were illegitimate? No. And that distinction is absolutely crucial. Liverpool John Moores University previously investigated allegations concerning his PhD and concluded that he had not plagiarized. Yet Cambridge subsequently announced an independent investigation into his appointment after what it described as new information concerning his qualifications and honorary appointments. So tonight, we're not going to conduct a trial of Jason Arday. We're going to conduct something much more interesting. We're going to examine the system. Why was Arday elevated so rapidly? Why was his race and his status as Cambridge's youngest Black professor such a prominent part of the institutional narrative? Did DEI create an environment where challenging the appointment became more difficult? And here's the uncomfortable question. Could the very people who claimed to be helping Black academics actually have contributed to putting an impossible burden on one Black academic to become a symbol of racial progress? One analysis in our source material describes as performative inclusion, institutions using the visibility of minority individuals as symbolic capital while failing to change the underlying structures. And tonight we want to examine that argument, and we also want to examine the reaction, because there is something extraordinary happening. The debate appears to be moving away from, did Cambridge get the appointment right, towards, how dare anybody question a Black professor? And that is where we have arrived. And then we have a very serious problem. Because equality means that nobody should be above scrutiny and nobody should be below it either. Joining me tonight is Dr. Anjuli Pandavar. Anjuli is a writer and social critic who holds a PhD in political economy. Born into a Muslim family in apartheid South Africa, she left Islam in 1979. She is a staunch defender of Israel. Andy Linton joins us from Alicante in Spain, and Andy is originally from the UK but lived in Ireland for 42 years. He's married to an Irish woman, and Andy is a broadcast consultant. He's also a political and current affairs commentator. He contributes on social media to the most important current affair items of the day. And our regular GreenZone panelist and co-producer, Marco Alexander, joining us from Jerusalem. Marco is an Irishman who has made Jerusalem his home. He's an independent interpreter, licensed tour guide, and political commentator with a unique understanding of Israeli society. Fluent in English, Hebrew, and Italian, he provides valuable historical culture and political context that helps Irish audiences better understand developments in Israel and the wider Middle East. And I want to welcome you all to this special edition of the Green Zone.
Thank you.
Now, before we get into anything, I want to just be very clear about something here. Let me just, I want to be clear about what the Green Zone is about. It's about bringing an alternative opinion and narrative to various social, political, and world events. It is a fact we are living in the world where most dominant narratives are from the left of the political spectrum or the far left. That doesn't mean they're all wrong. On our program, we endeavor to get professional people who know what they're talking about, and we're not here to give the left of center narrative. There's plenty of that out there already, and we don't apologize for it, and we will not be intimidated. I say this because Marco was promoting tonight's broadcast on various social media platforms, as was all, and he included Open University on as part of that promotion, only to receive these messages. Marco, just tell us about these messages here for a minute now.
Yeah, well, I noted that there were messages that very much clouded events, put it that way. People were trying to push a particular version of events which didn't correspond to reality. So I thought it appropriate that people should hear another side of the story. Nothing offensive was said in these posts. It was merely our YouTube links in which we discussed what had been going on, the sequence of events. And here are the series of responses to this post. And it bears witness to what's actually going on in the world today. An incapacity, especially in academia and in certain spheres of academia, among certain students who are unable to harness a critical approach to what they see. They have essentially been indoctrinated, programmed, and they become almost hysterical when another series of facts are presented to them instead of engaging. And this is indicative of what's going on, and indeed of the response to the tragic death of Jason Arday.
And one of the just one of the comments, because you probably can't read them on the screen there, but one of the comments says, I will be checking to see if you are an Open University student, and if so, reporting this to the Open University using this post to flog your YouTube channel is indefensible. Now, Marco, it's indefensible what you're doing.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. It's very much what has happened with regard to this researcher, Nathan Kofnes, where they tried to silence him. So we see that there are certain resonances within certain spheres of academia. There is an active attempt to censor people who don't subscribe to groupthink and woke progressive ideology.
Now, and I also just want to, I'll just finish this just to say, we are not striving to get everyone to agree with us. What we are doing is providing an alternative and a legitimate response to various incidents, including the one that we're going to talk about tonight. We don't claim to have all the answers, and we don't post threatening and intimidating messages on the left view of these things, or these matters. So, and we also take texts coming in from people of all views. We'll take text coming in from them. So that's just to say what the Green Zone is about. Now, I also, Anjuli, you're very, very good to come on, because I know you have serious neck problems. I know you have serious neck problems because I know that the white privileged have been kneeling on your neck for so long. So I want to thank you for joining. I want to thank you for joining us. And you know, I hope your neck is all right.
It's creaking. We can hear the.
Very good. Excellent.
Now, just to give people a flavor of what we're actually going to be talking about tonight, I think this one kind of sums it up. Simon Pegg, is it? Simon Webb. Sorry, Simon Webb. Yeah. Simon Webb kind of covers what we're doing tonight. I think it's very good, actually. Just listen to this.
Hello again. I am, as regular viewers will perhaps know, not in general one for speaking harshly of villains and fools, but every so often I'm unable to restrain myself and feel obliged to come out against idiocy and wickedness. The sight of so many Afro-Caribbeans and Africans being stirred up by left-wing agitators last night was one such occasion. There is, I suppose, some excuse for the black people who were misled into going to Trafalgar Square to brandish placards bearing mystifying slogans such as "Rest in Power." These simple folk had been lured there by people who really ought to know better, such as Diane Abbott, a woman who never misses an opportunity to remind people of the colour of her skin and to use her black ancestry shamelessly for political purposes. Dreadful woman. I'm guessing that most of the people of colour present knew very little about the ins and outs of the case, but simply felt the usual obscure sense of grievance that they and their children cannot get on in life as much as the Indians, Chinese and white people are able to do. They are honestly baffled as to why, with rare exceptions such as Diane Abbott, they always seem to be at the bottom of the heap. It was not difficult to persuade them that they are victims of a series of cunning tricks by the country's white majority, and that whenever a young black man like Jason Arday does manage to raise himself by his own superhuman efforts to the level of the white intelligentsia in the academic world, then the knives are out until the white folk can push him down again and then hound him to his death as punishment for his audacity, daring to try and better himself against astronomical odds. You will hear that expression, hounded, a lot in some quarters, by the by, in connection with this business. It is used because it summons up the image of escaped slaves being tracked down with dogs in the antebellum southern states of America. How easy it is to decode these appeals to the black psyche when you've had enough practice. The black people, as I say, have some excuse for being led astray by those whose wits are sharper and intentions more cunning and crafty than their own. I don't really blame them for being led astray. It is the white people who organise and exploit the festering sense of victimisation in black people whom I do blame for this kind of thing. They know how easy it is to get these people all stirred up by false promises and untruthful stories of persecution, easily persuading them that the death of a confidence trickster was really tantamount to a lynching of the kind seen in the United States in the days of Jim Crow.
Yes, and that was Simon Webb there, giving us a flavour of what he thought of Trafalgar Square the other evening. Can I just first of all start with Anjuli, just to go back, because you obviously weren't on last Sunday's programme, and neither was Andy, and I'll be asking Andy as well. What did you think when this story broke? What was your thoughts when the story broke in the first place, before anything happened, Jason Arday?
Well, I think I watched your program of last Sunday, and you opened with an interesting remark, which was, unless you'd been living under a rock, you wouldn't know about this. And I didn't know about it, and I'd not been living under a rock, but metaphorically, I suppose I was. No, I hadn't heard anything of this until a few days after the death, I suppose, and then had to do very quick catching up. But my immediate response was not sympathy towards Jason Arday. My immediate response was, you got your comeuppance, and that remains my response. The black privilege gravy train came along and he got on board. That particular black privilege gravy train crashed and he got killed. Yes, I agree that every death is a tragedy, and father, husband, etc. lost, but he had a hand in it. And I'm not at all inclined to excuse him of his own role in his own demise. He happened to be a sick man. He happened to have various quite difficult personality disorders. His propensity for absurd lying to boost his own credentials. These things are known, or at least I found out about them when I was researching this. All those things notwithstanding, a situation has been created, and I dare say deliberately created, where Black people who are not qualified to occupy demanding roles, certain demanding roles in society, find their way to lucrative positions, either in such demanding roles or in fake roles that have that are bigged up to be important roles, such as DEI officers, etc., and find that is their way to glory and fortune. Now, I have to say, the way DEI is advocated for, it's as if it is correcting an historical wrong. I'm very sorry, but that is one of the biggest frauds. It has never been the case that unqualified Black people could get jobs for which they were not qualified. There is no such historical wrong. The historical wrong was that qualified Black people could not get the jobs for which they were qualified. What we have here in DEI is a perversion of history that claims these roles for unqualified Blacks. I'm sorry, it's a sick exercise. And the Blacks who take advantage of this are Blacks who are mediocre, unqualified, unprincipled, and people with no self-respect. Thankfully, there are many Blacks in the world who have enough self-respect to not touch such positions with a barge pole, because they know that these positions are tainted and they would not insult or demean themselves to be associated with such positions. And the great unfortunate part here is that the Black people who are qualified to take such positions might think twice about doing so because of the association with the way these, with what that program actually is, as a social engineering project in fact, to keep Blacks where they are. But also there's more to it than this, which I shan't go into at this moment because I've already spoken enough. I'll get to that point later.
Of course you will. Yeah, great. Thanks, Anjuli. And Andy, what was your thoughts when you first came across this story?
I first came across the story, I don't know, would it be 3 weeks ago now? I was listening to the radio one morning, some talk station, and the angle that this particular station was using was that a journalist had been investigated by the police for asking questions. And the angle they were taking was that this is outrageous, this guy's a journalist, he's doing his job, which in itself was enough to pique my interest. And then, of course, when the story evolved a bit, they then explained what journalist, who was Jack Grove of the Times Higher Education. And when it developed a little, and we find that he was investigating a Cambridge professor who was perhaps not who he said he was, or didn't have the qualifications he said he had, I think it was quite a long time in terms of listening to the story and thinking about it before I even realized that race had anything to do with it. Because I would expect the same thing from a Times educational reporter, or any reporter, in fact, who was investigating any academic for fraudulent qualifications. However, of course, then because the fact that this guy had been investigated, which is disgraceful, of course, the story moved a little directly onto Jason Arday, and we were then given his background or lack thereof. The fact that he basically is a charlatan, a Walter Mitty character who had invented all this amazing academic history. Well, not just academic, his health history. He managed to do I think it was a doctorate at the age of 20 when he'd only learned to speak at 18. All that stuff came into it. And then I started thinking to myself, well, hang on a minute. No one can do a doctorate at the age of 20 when he couldn't speak until he was 18. No one can do, like he got 2 A-levels. No one can take 2 A-levels when he can't read or write. Not easily anyway. So then that was when I started thinking, well, hang on a second. And it wasn't just me. Of course, it was other commentators. Hang on a second. Who facilitated this and why? And that is the crux of the story, isn't it? We've got this Walter Mitty character who bigged himself up. I wonder, did he big himself up and then found that he was being artificially promoted and then continue to do it on purpose? Or did he just not realise and continue to be oblivious to the positive discrimination that he was suffering? I guess we'll never know. However, the story comes round to the likes of Cambridge University and what the hell they were thinking. And if they can announce to the world that they've got a world-class professor within their previously hallowed portals, how else is their judgment flawed? And I think that's become the salient point.
And I'll stick with you, Andy, for a minute, because let's start with the most basic question. Can legitimate scrutiny of a black academic's credentials simultaneously be racist in some instances, or are we now in danger of treating the very act of scrutiny as racism?
I don't think it was racist. I don't think the scrutiny itself was at all racist. I think that scrutiny, both by the original journalist, Jack Grove, and by all the rest of the newspapers that piled onto it, the only reason his race was mentioned was because Cambridge mentioned his race. They brought that into play. No one else did. No one else was interested because it was the point they made. So if you bang a nail into the floor, you can expect people to trip over it. And I think that's what happened there.
Okay. Anjuli?
I do think that this case is going to make such scrutiny racist from this point on, for 2 reasons. Now everybody is going to have to be extra careful when they appoint a black professor. They will have to scrutinize beyond the normal scrutiny appropriate for such positions as they would for any other person, just in case this thing can blow up in their faces. That's the first thing. I think this makes it infinitely more difficult for qualified black professors to enter such positions because of the added scrutiny. It might not be publicly admitted, but the just because of the risk of what could happen if they get it wrong, the scrutiny will go well beyond what is required for the academic positions.
Do you think that even though Cambridge didn't scrutinize him enough?
Oh no, this is I accept that. You're quite right about that. But I think this is now bedeviled the background check and scrutiny standards, and it's done it in another way too. I fear that Cambridge University or other institutions who play these kinds of horrible games are going to have to atone for their sins, or preemptively atone for their sins by finding a white professor whom they can uncover some skeletons in his or her cupboard, and then haul them over the coals and thereby re-establish their credentials with the racist crowds out there who demand that they elevate Black people and do this in a negative way by showing that they can demote and abuse white people. This is turning everything into a mess, way beyond what we can anticipate at the moment.
Now, let me just show you guys. I came across this will show you what kind of stuff is on the internet in relation to winding people up and stuff like that, and no context behind it. I'm just going to show you three images. Okay, so this is the first one. This was on the web. It says kept their job, forced to resign. So these are how many? 3, 5, 6, 7 white professors and 2 colored or 2 black. Now the graphic is broadly based on real cases, but it needs qualification. William O'Reilly, Nicola Morrison, Anna Laura Wainwright, and Susanna Dickinson faced substantiated plagiarism citation issues, but they retained their position. Rachel Reeves acknowledged inadequate referencing in her book, but was not subject to an academic misconduct finding. Neri Oxman faced plagiarism allegations and apologized for citation problems, but she kept her job. Comparison is misleading because she was no longer an MIT professor. John Hattie faces serious plagiarism allegations, but denies them and remains under investigation. So this case is actually unresolved. Claudine Gay resigned as Harvard president amid plagiarism citation controversy, but Harvard's review did not find research misconduct. And Jason Arday resigned from Cambridge amid plagiarism and other allegations, which he denied. His case was also more complicated than simply being found guilty of plagiarism. The key point here is the graphics forced to resign label is very strong here. It's a more accurate description would be resigned amid controversy. The cases are not equivalent. Some involved formal findings, some citation, attribution problems, and others remain allegations. So the legitimate question isn't necessarily why were these people treated differently because of race. The evidence shown doesn't establish that. The stronger question is, are academic institutions applying consistent standards when allegations of plagiarism or academic misconduct arise? And if not, why not? Now, I will come back to another 2 later on, but not quite yet. We'll come back to them a little later. Now, Marco, did you want to say anything on what they've been saying there?
Well, I can repeat what I said the other evening, basically, which obviously connects to what has been said by Andy and Julie. And I believe that fundamentally DEI is a racist endeavor. It treats minorities with condescension. It is a cynical operation to basically deploy a type of replacement theology. A replacement theology, in a sense, to scupper the academic framework and to ostensibly expiate the sins of Western civilization against minorities. A very one-sided version of events, but it's something that has been deployed with great success, because basically the Jason Ardays of the world have been used in a cynical way, and I tend to shift the blame more towards those who engaged his, I'm not going to say disservices. I think it was a cynical attempt to use somebody who is obviously inadequate. And I watched some of his lessons. I took the trouble to watch some of his lessons and lectures, and this only reinforces my conviction. He was in some way used as a wrecking ball to attack the assumptions on which academia, as it developed in the West, developed.
And Julie, is there a danger? Sorry, what evidence would you need to see before you accepted that racism was actually a motivating factor in the Arday coverage? What would you say? What would be racism for you if in this story, if it was racism? What would it be? How would you see it?
Yeah, I would ask that question if I saw that apples were being compared with apples and pears with pears. This isn't obvious from that poster that you just showed us. And I'm not trying to suggest that the allegation of the poster is incorrect. I'm suggesting that it is questionable. There is a distinction. I'm not justifying any crimes or misdoings here. But there is a distinction between committing plagiarism, and there are plagiarisms of different kinds, some more serious than others, on the one hand, and being unqualified for the job in terms of abilities and skills. Those are two different things. And you can find a perfectly good professor, perfectly skilled in their field, very good teacher, etc., but at some point had got a citation wrong in some paper. Is that plagiarism or is that not? Or chose to summarize something, paraphrase something, and had done it in such a way that the net impression of the paraphrase is that the paraphraser that those are his or her words. That's something to be discussed and looked into. It's not necessarily deliberate. And so I would ask whether all the people in that poster, I think were 9 or 12, I don't remember now, whether all the people, 9 people, okay, thank you, whether they were all guilty of just plagiarism, or were some of them actually not qualified to be teaching or holding the positions that they were holding. So, and if those two things are combined, you are not qualified and you plagiarized in order to get into the position. That to me is there's no question there. You go, you're out, right? So if you're not qualified in the first place, in order to get the position, the likelihood is that you will also plagiarize. And so the plagiarizing is deliberate, and it's intended to mislead not only author in terms of authorship, but in terms of attaining a position for which you are not qualified. Now, having said that, I'm not putting any of these points on any of the 9 people in that poster, but I would want to see those questions answered before I decide that poster is just.
Yeah, because the reason I picked those 3 is because it's like you know where to say read the small print on thing, because when the figures are correct, and I'll be showing another 2 later on, there's actually figures in, the figures are correct, but they're taken out of context. And that's the key here, is that they're taken out of context and used then to wind people up and stuff like that. But Andy, does calling the coverage that we've seen a racist feeding frenzy actually answer any of the questions about Arday's academic record or Cambridge's appointment process?
No, of course it doesn't. It circumnavigates that whole issue. It's maybe it's a defense mechanism by those types that promote DEI, by the, let's use the word lefties. It's a defense mechanism in that if they can't correctly and honestly answer the question, then let's play the racist card. They've got quite a big pack of cards, all of which are racist ones, so you can play them very often. I think that's what it is. It's a defense mechanism when you know you're up against the wall. And
Julie, just in relation to the way that the left have handled this. They made this guy the poster boy, all of that. Haven't the left done it again with this insane racist thing, letting Cambridge off the hook here? That they're clouded out now by all this racist stuff, when really that Cambridge has real answers, real questions to answer here.
Cambridge has real questions to answer. There's no issue about that. But I don't think that Cambridge, I mean, as bad as Cambridge's actions were, I don't think that Cambridge is the problem here. Yes, they have things to answer for, but it's a much, much bigger question here. This race bludgeoning, what's the word? Bludgeoning. That's the word I'm looking for. Race bludgeoning of anyone who raises any questions about these issues is an analogy of something else far more serious going on in our society. And I wrote about this in my latest Substack post. And that is screaming racism in order to stop criticism or to stop scrutiny is an analogy or is analogous to screaming Islamophobia to stifle criticism of Muslims and Islam. It is exactly the same device and it works in exactly the same way. And these two things might well be more closely related than we think, or than we would at first imagine. Cambridge is hauled over the coals over what happened to its appointee, one person, one professor, one incident. And I'm not diminishing the gravity of that in any way when I say that far more serious and far more iniquitous is what's been going on in Western universities for the last few decades, with the setting up of Islamic studies departments. Islamic studies departments in Western universities are filled with students and professors even less qualified, academically qualified, than the person at the center of the current controversy. These people, their approach, the standards that they apply in Islamic studies departments are Islamic standards, not academic standards. It is forbidden to question anything. Nobody would dare apply academic scrutiny to anything because this is not allowed. And the universities have kept this whole business quiet and under wraps because it's a cash cow for those universities. But in terms of academic qualifications and standards and abilities, they bottom. And this is concealed. And so the sudden upsurge in charges of racism against people who are critical of what's been happening with Cambridge, this to me looks like an orchestrated smokescreen to conceal a far, far bigger problem of the same kind that is to be found in Western universities that have Islamic studies departments. It's to hide that. That's my gut suspicion.
Okay, and
You
before
raise.
go
Sorry,
ahead, Marco. No,
Eugene,
go ahead, Marco. No, go on.
if I,
Go on, please do.
Thank you. Anjuli raised a very important point, which I did mention in the previous podcast on this subject. Indeed, Arday had an interesting colleague in Cambridge, and as far as I understand, she's still there, who has interesting association with Hizb ut-Tahrir, namely that is Dr. Farah Ahmed. So this is very true, and it only reinforces the kind of process which we are seeing, which was set in train a long time ago, namely the woke progressive left working in tandem with Islamism, and indeed we know this is well funded by Gulf states. So there is something that was set in train a long time ago. You rightly raise this because there is a direct connection, at least in emotive terms, between the Islamophobia term and the racist card. So that's a very important point which you raise, and I think we should be focusing on this. At least we should be raising people's awareness that the deck has been stacked with regard to academia.
I hope I've started this debate, brought us into the public domain with the last essay that I put on my Substack. I'm sorry to plug this, but I think it's a public service.
Plug.
On my Substack, Murtad to Human, the very latest essay there deals with this and with this connection. I don't expect people to agree with me, but go there, read it, argue with it, discuss it. Please.
Are you able to put a link on it in the message or anything there? If you can't, Anjuli, I'm putting you on the spot. But if you're able to do it, throw it into the thing. Now, before I come to Andy, because I want Andy's view on what's been said there. Just before I come to, I just want to just say, I forgot to say it at the beginning of the program for our viewers. Just ask them to please share this podcast now with family and friends, and ask you to subscribe to the podcast. Because it helps us to bring better and even more excellent content to our viewers and listeners. And as well as that, this evening, if you would drop a comment or question into the chat, we will put it before the panel here if it requires, but we'll still show it one way or the other. And we don't care whether it's from the left or right or from wherever. We don't care. We will take all comments on board. And of course, just to say good evening to Otta, who's a regular viewer here on the Green Zone. So very good evening to you, Otta, as well. Now, Andy, do you want to pick up on what on this turn of events in this webinar in relation to that it's a smokescreen? What we're seeing going on with Cambridge, but there's a much wider thing here to do with Islam.
Yes, I agree. I don't think it's a different thing. I think it's the same thing. And I agree with everything Anjuli said, apart from when you said Cambridge weren't the main people to blame in this. In this particular instance, I think they are. I mean, whatever about there being a guy who's a charlatan who overplays himself and tells a lot of fibs about his achievements. But, those white people do that as well. His race had nothing to do with the fact that he did that. But what was important was the fact that Cambridge decided to use his race to justify their handling of that. They must have surely known that their handling of that was incorrect when it was brought up. They must have known. Come on. It's obvious. But they, instead of saying, "Oh, perhaps our checks and balances need to be improved, and there's things to learn here," that famous phrase that they always use. Instead of doing that, oh no, they hunkered down. They got down in the trenches and they pulled the racism lid over the top, so that they didn't, well, in theory, so they didn't have to answer any of those points. And it is exactly the same as when people get accused of Islamophobia. You're not allowed to criticize Islam because you're criticizing the religion. No, you're not. You're criticizing the actions of certain people who label themselves that way. And I'm afraid Cambridge are guilty of doing that. It's the same thing.
Okay. Okay. So I want to move now to the next part of the program, which is Cambridge creating the symbol. And Julie, I'll go to you on this one. Does the fact that Cambridge repeatedly highlighted Arday as its youngest Black professor tell us anything about the priorities surrounding the appointment? What does it tell us about it?
Yes, I mean, this is. I think Cambridge has been under pressure for a long time for not demonstrating, for not representing, as they say, black academics at the highest level, and I think Cambridge capitulated to the pressure from the mad crowd. Instead of standing their ground and saying, these are our standards, we will stick to these standards. If you want us to apply to appoint more Black professors to these demanding positions, then let more Black professors apply. And if they meet our standards, they stand a chance of getting in. That is, of course, if they are the best people for the job, even if they qualify. But they didn't do that. They didn't stick to their guns. They didn't stick to their principles. They capitulated and gave in to in fact, they gave in to mob rule. That's what it is. And a racist mob rule, no less. And the mob has just been elevated to an entire national phenomenon. It was something that just Cambridge had to face and deal with. And now every university in the country knows that there's a national mob that can be mobilized against you if you should dare to step out of line. So you'd better get racist pretty damn quick. Yes, I don't know whether that answers your question.
No, it's good. But is Andy, is there anything inherently wrong with celebrating the appointment of a Black professor?
No, so long as he's qualified for his job. You know, it like if your criteria for giving someone a job, any job, is their qualifications and their suitability for the position, then you're not being racist. If, however, the color of that person's skin enters into the decision in any way, then that's racism. And it's not racist then to question or criticize that. Any position should go to the person who's best suited for it. It should be a meritocracy. And, you know, because the world has gone the way it is, people, institutions, particularly like Cambridge, do seem to be under pressure to over-promote, shall we say, dark-skinned, non-white people. Let's say non-white people. And that's wrong, because there shouldn't be that pressure. So in that respect, I might possibly modify my previous assertion that it was all Cambridge's fault. Maybe it's not all their fault. It's the pressure they're under to make them to make themselves look as if they're doing the right thing, even when they're not really.
And Julie, do you want to add to that, or?
Yes, I agree with Andy. And my slight difference with Andy is that I think I don't share his generosity towards the Islamic studies departments. I think it's I think they need to be investigated.
No, I don't have much generosity, really.
Sorry?
I don't have much generosity, really.
Okay, beg your pardon. No, I hope this opens this up. You mentioned a woman at Cambridge University. People like that, all of them, were they appointed because they are Muslim or not?
Okay. Okay, let me
I
just
believe
look
I
at-
mentioned that with regard to Farah Ahmed. I mentioned it. Well, clearly, if universities are receiving financial benefits from Gulf states, and I think the important one at the moment to mention is Qatar, there will be, let's put it this way, incentives to appoint academics in inverted commas from certain backgrounds, and indeed the syllabus, the curriculum has been manipulated as well to fit these academics, put it this way, to facilitate their work.
If people can be appointed to Islamic studies departments without the high academic credentials and standards and qualifications that people are appointed elsewhere in the university, then why should Jason Arday have been sacked in the first place?
Indeed, the system, the deck has been stacked. There's no question of that. You know, it has been stacked. Why does Arday stand out? It's because he's so obviously ill-suited to that role. Now, with regard to the other academic whom I mentioned, she may well be a very articulate person, pursuing an agenda. Still a pernicious influence, I would say. Still a pernicious influence in view of her ties with certain terrorist and Islamist organizations. But what stands out with Arday, and to a certain extent, it makes him a little bit more of a victim of the system, and somebody to a great extent, while he did willingly and knowingly climb aboard the woke train, the doors were opened and he was transported for as far as it was possible to go.
Yeah, we shouldn't forget that that this is a phenomenon across the board. It's not just in universities. You know, the whole idea that you need to have racial quotas is ridiculous to begin with. So obviously you're going to fill the quotas, and obviously you're going to get people who are not qualified, and obviously you're going to get charlatans and scammers and con persons who could not get ahead in life otherwise, who see their opportunity here and will take it. And on the one hand, you can say, well, why not? You are foolish enough to offer me the job. I'm going to take it.
Yeah, and it's only a matter of time. It's only a matter of time because it's on a different quota level. I think I mentioned this before as well. A different quota level is the quality of politicians we're getting in Ireland at the moment. Because one time it was you picked the best person to go for the seat, to run for the seat of power, and but now you have to have a quota of so many women, so many men, and it's only a matter of time before it's so many black people. And so now what's happening is that you are now meeting the quota first. That's your very first protocol, and then after that, then you see who is the best person for the job, and that to me is a huge demise in politics, and it's the same in this area what you were talking about as well. Let me just look at a second graphic that came up. Now, this one here, as you can see there, who gets falsely accused of academic cheating, and black students obviously are coming out on top, Latino students next, and then white students are the lowest. Now, the actual figures are correct. There's no qualm with the figures. But again, what's missing here is the small print, because while the figures are real, the graphic is misleading in how it presents them. The October 2021 Student Voice Survey covered about 2,000 undergraduates at 98 institutions. 12% of black students and 12% of Asian American students reported being accused of plagiarism, compared with 6% of all students. However, the graphic says accused of academic cheating. That's what it says. The 12% figure specifically concerns plagiarism. The survey also found 9% of black students reported being accused of cheating, compared with 6% overall. Crucially, the survey measured whether students reported being accused. It did not establish whether the accusations were justified or false. The bottom line, black and Asian students reported accusations of plagiarism at twice the rate of students overall. 12% versus 6%. What isn't established is that they were falsely accused twice as often, or that racism caused the disparity. For a DEI academic integrity discussion, the stronger question is, are differences in academic accusations evidence of systematic bias, or could they reflect differences in reporting, behavior, detection, and disciplinary practices? The data demonstrates a disparity, but they do not by themselves establish a cause. So therefore, the graphic was put up, but there's no context put up with it, the meat behind that. So that's just another graphic that we have there. Another example of what's going up on the thing. But
just a point
yes,
on that.
Sure.
There's also a question of cultural attitudes towards cheating. This is also a variable.
Tell us more.
Well, I used to teach in an Arab country that I shall not name at this point, but it's easy to look it up in any case. And while it might perhaps be unfair to say that all students cheated, the prevalence of cheating was such as to characterize the learning environment. And if one says everybody did it, one is not meaning literally 100%, but enough for the meaning to hold, that it was the culture in this place to cheat. And students would spend more time figuring out how to cheat than actually doing the work. This is not my personal observation. It was known. Everybody warned me about this when I started teaching there, and it's a cultural thing. Cheating is not seen as the thing that you do not do. It is seen as the thing that you do. If you don't cheat, you're stupid.
If you're not cheating, you're not trying.
Yes.
But Andy, just taking up on the points about the Islamist, and not just Islamist, but colored people, black people, and then people with autism and so forth. Are the woke left, are they dumbing down the quality of education in universities to accommodate, to bring it to the lowest common denominator? And if so, how dangerous is that?
I think that's a good point, and I'm afraid to say I think it does happen. It would be look what someone with whom I'm acquainted has just said in the comments. Helen has just said that she thinks the pressure on institutions to be diverse has overshadowed the importance of giving students the proper education they deserve. And that's not been mentioned. That's true. And in order to bring up the average and include people who, for whatever reason, do not perform to the highest levels of expectations, you bring everyone else down. Do you know what? I heard an interesting fact the other day about, where was it? Singapore. Singapore's A-level results are something like 30% higher than the UK's. However, Singapore's A-levels are set by the Cambridge board, funnily enough, but the questions are the next level up from those set in the UK. So even with that advantage, you can see that there's manipulation going on, and that is dangerous. I've never agreed with that. I'm sure that when I did my A-levels 140 years ago, standards were higher than they were now, and I'm sure when I did them, standards were lower than they had been 10 years previously, although sadly not low enough because I didn't do very well. But it does happen, and I do think it's dangerous.
Yeah, Anjuli, I saw you nodding there, so I know you have something to say on this. Yeah, go ahead. No, sure. No, it's great. I know you do want to say something. Go ahead.
We might recall John Major, the most stellar Prime Minister Britain has ever had, announcing that what used to be perfectly well-functioning polytechnics were all to become universities during his tenure. It was a catastrophe because there was a universal mismatch across the entire society of unqualified people ending up in positions that they were not suited for, and perfectly qualified people now being removed from where they were perfectly suited. I want to, if I may,
Yes.
recount a little anecdote. I was looking for a job somewhere in that period, and I had an interview with one of what came to be called the new universities, one such institution somewhere in the north of England. And the interview went very well. I did very well in the interview. The responses were very positive. And yet I did not get the position, which baffled me somewhat. I called up about a week later for some feedback. And the lady explained to me that I was too intellectual for their students. And this is a university. Now, I might have been naive at that point, but I was stunned. How can somebody be too intellectual for an institution whose very definition is the pursuit of the intellect and the engagement of the intellect? But that is where we were. And so the dumbing down was real. The dumbing down was serious. It was from on high, and it was policy. It was not an accident. And I see where we are now as simply the workings out of these disastrous decisions decades ago.
But you
also furthermore, again in the UK, during Tony Blair's tenure, he decided that it would be better if everyone went to university, even if you were only doing American studies or media or something, some non-subject. So everyone went to university, which meant there was no one training to be bricklayers or carpenters.
Yes.
So
yes.
you've now ended up, maybe it's not, actually, I don't think it's worn out now. I think it kind of is still going. So you've got all these very useful trades, which with not enough people in them. But there's a lot of people walking around with a qualification in animal maintenance who can't manage a job.
Golf course management, etc. No, but this is exactly the point I was making. You know, it's a complete mismatch of qualifications across the board. And it's a wonderful way to destroy your society. Yeah,
and to pick up on what Andy was just saying there, the same in Ireland. When the crash happened, and obviously we were in Hock, and then when they came back to building houses, they had no qualified plumbers, electricians, or anything like that. They had to go on a turn like the Titanic, tried to turn the Titanic to try and address that problem. And to date, we still have a housing crisis in Ireland, and it's because we've one of the reasons is we hadn't enough people, tradesmen, to do the job, or do I have to be politically correct now and say tradespeople? Sorry, just in case there. Okay, just to say hello to Helen. Hey guys, great show as always. I think the pressure on institutions to be diverse has overshadowed the importance of giving students the proper education they deserve, and this has not been mentioned. Thanks indeed for that, Helen. Really appreciate that. Okay. Just in relation to the oversight of any investigations or oversight of universities, there doesn't seem to be any. I mean, we talked about this again last week about funding. No one knows where the funding is coming from. We do know where it's coming from, but what I'm saying is the ordinary person on the street doesn't know where the funding is coming for those universities. And he who has the he who has the money calls the tune, or whatever. Is there a need now for an oversight on universities down to the last cent that they get and how they do their business? Is there a need for an oversight body in each country, even or internationally even?
I think oversight is an understatement, Eugene, at this point in time. The system has been so corrupted and poisoned that really what would be required is a purge. I believe it needs a purge at this stage. When you have people who have been addicted for many years, you need something much more drastic than mere oversight.
Yeah, the question is, who will do this? Who is clean enough, untainted enough to carry this out? From the universities upwards, they're all compromised.
It needs a government intervention, except I can't think of a government who is clean enough and untainted enough to do that.
Exactly.
By the way, Anjuli, you had long dreadlocks, you might have passed that interview. that should be a salutary lesson. Yeah.
I obviously need a stylist.
But of course, you didn't. Eugene and I grew up in different. We went to school in Ireland many years ago, and we obviously were the beneficiaries of a different schooling than to what young people are used to now. Isn't that right, Eugene?
Absolutely.
Because Ireland in those days was at the avant-garde of BBJ pedagogy. Do you remember BBJ pedagogy, Eugene?
I don't. Go on.
It was a beat the bejesus out of you.
Listen, looking into the investigations that are going on at the moment, and Cambridge investigating. I mean, is that even trustworthy at this stage? Is that even possible that Cambridge could investigate what's going on here? I mean, can they really? Have they any credibility?
They're marking their own homework. Of course, there's no credibility there.
No, it would have to be an external adjudicator, preferably an adjudicator who has nothing to do with any of the institutions of power in the country. Then there might be a chance.
What about a public inquiry?
Yeah. Yes.
Andy said it.
Opportunity for lots of lawyers to get
I
very
was just
rich.
going to say the same thing.
Yeah.
I was just going to say exactly the same
Now,
thing.
having said that, is that the only possible method? I suspect it may well be, but it itself would have to be constrained so that it didn't just turn into a cash cow for those involved.
There could be a class action. People have clearly been defrauded here.
Well, that's a good point.
Yeah, that might be the way to go. That
could be a good point.
Everybody's paid to study at that. Sorry.
Exactly, and those students that were under Mr. Arday did not receive the education they paid for.
Yeah, and all the other unqualified people in those universities.
Yeah.
Yes, he's just. This is the tip of the iceberg. I mean, it's clearly not an isolated event.
Let's broaden that a little bit now, because you make an interesting point, and it was raised at the last one as well about a class action. Anjuli and Andy, anyone can answer this. How would say I was a student of Professor Arday at the time, and I went on, he was one of my lecturers or whatever, and I went on to pass or not pass or whatever. How can I prove that I'm talking in general terms here. How can I prove that he was at fault or another professor was at fault? How could I prove that?
The lectures are not always, but usually online, and can be seen there, can be scrutinized there. It is not unknown that students record their lectures with their phones or on their computers. That's if you think that your professor or your lecturer is indoctrinating you or isn't teaching up to standard, you don't need to teach these kids how to get the evidence. They're more fair with these things than we are, and it's a simple, I think, it's a simple matter of consumer protection. You paid for something and you didn't get it. You demand your money back.
Compensation.
Go to court. Take me to court if you want to, but I'm demanding my money back.
Well, I think it's a case of suing for damages here. It's not simply getting money back.
Yeah.
The
true.
The years
true.
that have
years
been
of
lost.
your life wasted.
Yeah.
Parents going into debt to pay for their children. Indeed, to get a useless education from a quack.
And I guess there would be other universities conducting similar courses with whom you could compare the results.
Do you think this has sent shivers through the major universities around in Europe and thing, or is that wishful thinking?
No, I think there will be repercussions. This is too serious.
Cambridge is a big name.
Yeah.
Cambridge is a big name, and it's astonishing that nothing happened to Oxford, or maybe something did, and I was just not aware of it. After they appointed Tariq Ramadan as a professor.
Indeed, very good point.
Serial rapist, found guilty in 2 countries with proper legal systems of the highest standard of violent rape. And what does that say about Oxford and their assessment of somebody's suitability for teaching there? He had female students and female colleagues.
Okay.
Why aren't we hearing about that?
And this is only one case we've heard of. I mean, that to me says there has to be, by just the law of averages, there has to be cases in other universities as well. Marco, just back to your thing about a purge. When you say a purge, what do you actually mean?
Well, getting rid of people who are thoroughly unqualified or who indeed are elements that are extraneous to Western academia, namely these Islamist elements and people that are trying to bring down a serious academic environment. And indeed undermine the very basis of Western society as we understand it, because to a great extent, I can cite the example of Antonio Gramsci, the Italian political thinker, communist, who understood the importance of gaining control of the levers of culture. And this is what these people have done very well. Unfortunately, serious people have fallen asleep at the post. And that's why these people have been in and they've been able to insinuate themselves and to corrupt the system, whereby decent people are penalized and opportunists and people with agendas foreign to what we understand as being something positive have been able to rise through the ranks.
And Julie?
I agree with what Marco has said.
Would you go any further in relation to how to purge? I mean, we can't really, or can we trust the universities to do an audit of the people in their ranks, the professors in their ranks? Can we trust them to do that? I don't know. Can we?
I think there's an opportunity for Israel here. Israeli universities are very good. There's wokeness there too. But I think offering scholarships to Western students to study in Israel would be a very smart move at this point. And not just to Jewish students, just
No, of course
put it
not.
out there. Come to Israel, study
Plenty
in
of
Israel,
non-Jewish
and you
students
will get
study in
a
Israel.
real damn education, for goodness sake.
Yeah. Interesting that you should mention Israel, actually, because I was looking at one of these influencers, a lady called Dr. Shola, another doctor of Nigerian origins, ranting about the racism that caused Arday to commit suicide, if it be suicide. She actually brought into it the Zionists, and she was referring to the professor who actually exposed, or one of the main actors in this event, and she referred to him as a Zionist, and so it just shows you the state of mind of these people, the way they make this connection. Now, obviously, this professor did say some controversial things. He did say there was a racial element he spoke about a genetic element with regard to students with their capacity. He was making some references of the sort, which, listen, we're in a society where free speech should obtain, but the fact of the matter is you have this reaction where people just crumbled at the thought of such a prospect without offering a counter argument. They just went off into hysterical fits.
I think that's what is so sick about that is that Jason Arday was not a well man. He was a man with serious psychological issues, and vulnerable, and dependent for his for continuing his life. I'm not a clinician. Don't get me wrong here. I'm not trying to provide clinical assessment, but on an educated layperson's from an educated layperson's perspective. This was a vulnerable individual who relied for his pursuit of life on building crazy fantasies, and those fantasies remaining unchallenged. And what has happened at Cambridge is that the entire edifice, fantastic, absurd edifice that he had constructed in order to keep his own life going, that crumbled, and there was no way he could rebuild it. People could see that it was all a pack of lies, and whether you could even call it lies coming from a mind like that is another story. It is a manifestation of a certain illness, emotional illness, and this has been completely obscured, covered by the racist madness that has taken over. The man was ill, and we should be talking about that.
And what does it say about the people who were crying at the solidarity meeting in Trafalgar Square? There were thousands of them there. I don't know how many thousands, but certainly it shows something. This is reflected in the mental state of these people as well, weeping.
Read Gustave Le Bon, The Madness of Crowds. And there have been other works, other studies of this kind subsequently. Le Bon wrote in the 19th century, I think. And yes, there's mass hysteria. It's North Korea.
Without even having acquainted themselves with the facts.
Yeah, you just get swept up in this and off you go.
They show they show perverse disregard for facts and disconnect from a faculty to reason. It's quite extraordinary.
I think it's disconnection rather than disregard.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Diane Abbott was mentioned earlier, and she did a lovely speech at that meeting in Trafalgar Square, in which she produced Jason Arday's name wrong. She called him Jason Arday. So look, she's a professional idiot anyway, but that does illustrate what's going on in these people's minds.
Yes.
One other point I'd like to just briefly touch on, well, I think Marco touched on it, was that it could be said that Cambridge failed in their duty of care to Arday. the fact that they did nothing, in fact, they falsely promoted him, contributed to his mental downfall.
And his eventual demise.
Yes.
But Andy, just we're living in a world of madness right now. We're living in a world of madness where equality has been redefined. I mean, we're now in a situation where there's people in the world who don't have a disability. There's people in the world who have a disability, and those people that have a disability have abilities as well. They're not. It's not that they don't have abilities; they do. But we're now living in a world where equality has been redefined. In other words, as I said in the last program, if I have just one eye, one arm, and one leg, you have to give me equality. I am allowed to become a pilot. You have to make sure that I have equality in becoming a pilot. So isn't equality, that whole meaning of equality has been redefined in a nonsensical manner, has it not?
It's been bastardized, hasn't it? Equality should really equal meritocracy, but it doesn't anymore, as you say, because if you can fly a plane with one eye because you can possibly be discriminated against for your lack of an eye, then you're not qualified to fly that plane as well as I am, because I've got two eyes. I haven't got a pilot's license, but aside from that, equality has been, shall we say, disqualified in a lot of respects. Yeah.
And why are there still straight white males in piloting? Why?
Yeah,
Answer
why?
me that.
They don't deserve that.
No.
Yeah. And you don't deserve, you guys don't deserve that, Anjuli, either. You don't deserve it. You know?
We do.
But on that, Anjuli, equality has been redefined and bastardized.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
I can go back to George Orwell's what was the essay? Politics and the English Language. Politics and he predicted this. He predicted what happens when you mess with a language in that way, and how thinking dies. I was alarmed. Some had been out of circulation, but when I got back into circulation, I discovered that privilege didn't mean what I thought it to mean, or what I'd always known it to mean. Representation didn't mean what I always thought it to mean. And then virtue started meaning something else, and equality means something else. Now, I would argue, and probably I would get opposition for this, that those words, all those bastardized and corrupted words, they still mean what they do, what they always did. They are being used by a dominant orthodoxy that is both ignorant and arrogant, and considers itself entitled to do with the language what they want. And so it is up to us to protect the language, specifically so that we protect clear thought. The victim here is not the language. The victim here is thinking. And the crowds that you mentioned on Trafalgar Square, etc., are devoid of thought. There is no thought there. And it begins with messing with the language, which does not demand you to think clearly or to discern properly any longer. When George Orwell further developed this concern into the novel 1984, and the whole language of newspeak, what we have is newspeak, and it's not only for the bureaucratic efficiency of managing communication. It is expressly for the destruction of thought, and I mentioned in this article that I referred everyone to earlier, the kind the quality of cognition that you need to have in order to succeed in an Islamic studies department is precisely the kind of thing that you saw on Trafalgar Square, and it's precisely the kind of thing that George Orwell was talking about in 1984.
Indeed. I just wanted to jump in, if I may. And the moral of the story is that once these cognitive elements have been compromised, you see people who are open to manipulation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is the operative concept here. They are malleable. You can see how easily these people are stirred up, and they break down, fundamentally speaking.
Now, let me put this to you. Is Jason Arday now going to be the George Floyd, US's George Floyd?
I think I mentioned that to you the other day, didn't I? When we spoke that the left seems to have decided that, yes, brilliant, we've got our own George Floyd now.
Homegrown.
Oh, yeah, how fantastic. Now, George Floyd, we could do a whole discussion on him.
Yes.
Yeah, this is a guy who was addicted to fentanyl, had a conviction for beating up his girlfriend while she was pregnant, and who wasn't effectively killed by a police officer. He died during restraint because his body was full of fentanyl. I've read the post-mortem. It's available publicly. But, of course, you had all these virtue-signalling politicians and idiots all over the world getting down on their bloody knee. For what? It did nothing to anyone with a brain cell in their head apart from make them look bloody stupid. And I do think that Arday is being looked upon by some as their lovely, as you say, homegrown George Floyd. Let's hope that doesn't get traction, because it'll mean that the world has gone even more mad.
And it would be grossly unfair
Yes.
on Jason Arday.
Yes, absolutely.
But is it not inevitable? Because the madness of politicians now in the West and in on the left, the woke left, is it not inevitable that things are going to massively change for the worse as a result of this?
I fear it will get worse. There are many different factors coming together, and this is the latest strand that will lead to a breakdown and to disorder, and we could almost say civil war scenario. There are a number of things flowing in, coming together, that do not bode well.
It is possible that it maybe this is more hope than anything here. It is possible that if Cambridge should go down for this, that might be the turning point.
I think one thing that may preclude Arday becoming a European Floyd is that there's a lot more background available in Arday's case than there was in Floyd's case. You know, we know an awful lot that went on before Arday's tragic death. We know about the journalists who were investigated and by police. We know about all the specious claims he made about his own. We know all that. Whereas with Floyd, we didn't really know anything. It was very easy with Floyd to say, "Oh, here's a poor black man. A cop stuck his knee on the back of his neck and killed him." At the time, there was no real background information, but with Arday there is. So I would hope that he won't become the latest person that causes idiot politicians to get down on their knees on their grubby carpets with.
And now we arrive at the most uncomfortable part of tonight's program, DEI. Because perhaps the biggest irony of the entire Arday story is this: what if the system designed to advance diversity actually helped turn Jason Arday into a symbol and made his eventual collapse much more catastrophic? Now, first of all, is there a need for DEI at all?
If you want to destroy society, yes, then there is a need for it.
Okay.
Yes, if you want to remove meritocracy, then yes, there is.
Indeed. If you want to sow discord, this is the way to go.
It's DEI, I suppose. Just on DEI in relation to what they did, they used this. It's very clear the way it was abused in the case of Jason Arday. Anjuli, what, as a black person yourself, what would you be saying to black people now to look at? What way would you be telling them, advising them to look at this from a black person's point of view?
I don't speak as a black person. Period. I speak as a person, an educated person, a well-traveled, worldly wise person, a compassionate person, a person who doesn't take crap. That's the kind of person I speak as. I have no advice to black people. They can think for themselves. If they want to do stupid things, they're free to do stupid things. I'm not their shepherd.
Andy?
Couldn't put it better myself. It's refreshing to hear that. It's perfect. That's the perfect answer to that question. And
is it fair to blame DEI for what happened to Arday, or are critics making a casual leap here?
I have a problem with what the assumptions that underlie these questions about DEI, and it's a point towards you specifically, Eugene. You seemed, and I could be wrong, please correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah. You seem to be you seem to be assuming that DEI is a social good, that there is some value in it, and that somehow it's been corrupted, or somehow that there are mistakes that have been made in its name, or something like this. DEI is an iniquity. There is nothing good that can be said about it.
Okay,
the outcomes we see are the intended results.
Okay,
intended outcomes.
Yeah, I don't have a particular. I'm not here to give a view on it because I'm asking you guys, but I'm saying this.
Okay.
The only reason I'm asking this question is because Nathan Kofnas, he said that he agreed with the principles of DEI, but he didn't agree the way it was abused by the likes of Cambridge, that it has been twisted and abused. I
disagree with him.
Okay, that's, yeah. So
I think he's got that. Maybe he said that in order to cover himself. I don't know. That's possible too. But no, that is most decidedly not the case.
Marco, has DEI any value whatsoever?
No, I don't think it has any intrinsic value. I understand the concerns of people who may have devised it and who thought of it as being as a remedy for something, but as a policy, it's a failure. There are people with real concerns who may have thought this was a way to correct something. I think most of them were duped, or they induced themselves into believing this. So it may have addressed conceptually real concerns, but it wasn't the answer, and it certainly was manipulated to damage society.
I would add to that. I think I mentioned it earlier on in the show. That it's purported to be addressing an historic injustice, and this historic injustice is Black people always being at the bottom of the pile socially. And there will have been discrimination, and widespread discrimination, keeping qualified Blacks out of important or socially significant positions. This will have been historically true. But what DEI has done and is doing and is being perpetuated as. There's no talk of reforming it or anything like this. It is not the historical wrong of qualified blacks not ending up in positions commensurate with their qualifications. That is not what is changing. What DEI is doing, it is taking unqualified blacks and they end up in position that they are not qualified. The qualified blacks are still there. DEI isn't helping them one bit. It is the general social evolution, the recognition of discrimination, the generalization of equality and civil behavior across the society, the legal strengthening of civil rights, etc. The cumulative effect of all these civilizational developments is what removes what were previously blockages and constraints in the way of qualified blacks getting to positions where they can contribute to society at the level that they're capable of contributing. What we're getting into those positions are the crapheads and the charlatans and the con men and the people with zero self-respect who ride the racist gravy train.
The perpetuation of victimhood, the perpetuation of victimhood,
yes.
I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Andy, just to pick up on what Anjuli is saying there, could the same outcome have happened under a completely conventional recruitment process?
No, because he wouldn't have got one of those jobs in the first place, because the university would have done their due diligence properly. So no, he wouldn't have got, probably not even the first position he was
wouldn't
awarded.
have even been invited to an interview.
Exactly.
No, he wouldn't have gotten on the shortlist in the first place.
No, he wouldn't. No.
Yeah.
So that's. But it's interesting to think, as I said before, did he use the system or did the system use him? Maybe it's a bit of both.
That was definitely both.
Yeah.
Definitely both.
Oh, by the way, I read earlier that Nathan Coffness, I forget what position he holds, but he's been removed from it for investigation now.
Yeah.
And of course am I right in saying he's Jewish?
Yes, he is indeed Jewish. And
How dare he?
Well, then how dare? Yeah, I mean, a Jew coming out with that. I mean, and you know, questioning someone like that. I mean, that's just
he needs to know his place, doesn't he?
Indeed. And the word Zionist was used today. I listened to another doctor. I mentioned it before. This Dr. Schola. Another person educated beyond her intelligence, where she mentioned the word Zionist with regards to Dr. Coffness, because at least he is a serious academic.
You'd wonder sometimes, do these people know what Zionism is? Right. I think they just use it as a word, as a tool.
Indeed.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to move to the final part here, because we're running over time a little bit, but and we're saying what must change is kind of the theme of this last segment of it. And just in that last one, we spent the last hour looking at Jason Arday and Cambridge University, but I suppose the questions now aren't about him, it's about what happens next, because Cambridge has a choice. It can defend the system, or it can investigate the system. They're the two choices it has. It can blame the critics, or it can examine itself. I think a lot of us know which way that'll go. And the same choice faces universities across Britain and Ireland, and indeed Europe, as you said, Marco. They're not just confined to here and across the water. What is the single biggest lesson that universities should take from this?
Good question, Eugene. Good question. They should start being universities again, and not merely sausage machines, because that's what they've become. They've been producing sausages for many a year now. People who do not question, who are easily offended, who don't ask questions, and who are just imbibed without reacting.
They need to stop social engineering and start just teaching
Indeed.
people stuff.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah, agreed.
That's been the option, indeed. Yeah.
But I bet when you say, Eugene, that what are they thinking and what are they going to do? I think there's probably been a lot of phone calls between various high parts of various academic institutions throughout the country saying, "Oh God," or "Oh dear, we need to investigate ourselves here," because there is also, of course, going to be lots of journalists doing a lot of digging right now to find out if Cambridge is indeed the only university guilty of something like this.
Yeah, and it's very true, and it's probably something we should keep an eye out on the Sunday papers, because that's usually when it comes out in the Sunday papers.
I also think there should be restrictions placed on foreign funding of universities. I'm not saying ban foreign funding, but certainly very, very serious constraints. Funding for the sciences, for engineering, for STEM, certainly, medical research, certainly, but for stuff that is so easily abused, no. For the social sciences in particular, no funding, no foreign funding. It is asking for trouble.
And just on that foreign funding and cutting it down or cutting it out in certain areas, I know in Ireland, I'm not sure if it's the same everywhere else. But I know in Ireland, the people in Ireland going to college don't want to pay for anything, so they want the government to pay for it. So universities obviously need money. They obviously need money. What kind of a model is best placed for university for funding them? Is it should the students pay for the funding? Should governments pay for what way should it be?
Students should pay in some shape or form. Somebody has to pay. It is always paid for by somebody. I think what should be introduced is some kind of national service where people generate wealth, where young people get into the workforce and they start generating wealth, they earn an income, and they study in tandem. So they have both experience of the real world with which they can measure their studies against. I think something like that could be a useful approach with variations, obviously.
Should we not return to the old idea of student grants? Because it could be said that if a government pays for people to go to university, the country subsequently benefits. Not everyone should get a grant, but if you can't afford to pay your way, there should be an easy way of applying for a grant.
Yeah, no, I affirm that's perfectly fine. But certainly, I believe you have to give something back, or at least, you can't just milk this. It's not just. I think the problem today is that we have a system where people speak of rights and no responsibilities. I think when you're part of a community, you have to chip in some way. Long-term loans could also be a possibility to soften the blow of the costs.
Well, that's what they do in the UK at the moment. It's a common cause of complaints.
There isn't one answer, but
I think there shouldn't be a right to go to university.
Well, that's true. It has to be balanced. It has to be balanced with duties.
There are far too many. Yeah. I think there are far. I'm going to get shut out now. There are far too many students at university because there are so many students who simply should not be at university in the first place. They should be in a different kind of educational institution. But it's become the ruling orthodoxy that everybody has a right to go to university. University is a very special kind of training, preparedness for a very particular kind of role in the society. And if you dumb it down so that everybody can go to university, you've messed with one of the important elements of what keeps a society capable of managing its own perpetuation into the future.
Indeed,
You've taken that away, and the place gets run by the caliber of people who today are our politicians.
Indeed.
Woefully low caliber.
Yeah.
Very
Okay. Okay, I'm going to leave the last words there with Anjuli. We've come to the end of this evening's program, wait, let's see now. Sorry, we've come to the end of this evening's program, the special edition of the GreenZone Conversations with Eugene Doyle. Tonight, we've deliberately gone beyond the headlines. We've talked about Jason Arday's tragic death. We've talked about racism. We've talked about media scrutiny, but we've also talked about something that is much harder to discuss, institutional accountability. But it's possible to believe that some of the coverage of Jason Arday was excessive, while also believing that Cambridge has serious questions to answer. It is possible to condemn racism without pretending that every allegation is racist, and it is possible to believe in equality without abandoning the principle of merit. In fact, perhaps those things should go together. The most disturbing possibility raised tonight is not that DEI helped Black academics, it's that DEI may sometimes reduce people to symbols. That an institution can celebrate somebody because they represent the right story, and then discover when the story starts to unravel that it never properly examined the person behind the symbol. If that happened to Jason Arday, he deserved better. Cambridge deserved better, and every academic, Black or white, deserves better. The answer to racism cannot be lower standards. The answer to racism cannot be protecting people from legitimate questions, and the answer to institutional failure cannot be blaming the people who discovered it. The answer has to be truth, and that's what we try to do here on the GreenZone, because Irish audiences are often presented with one interpretation of controversial stories. Tonight, we've tried to examine another, not because you have to agree with us, but because you deserve to hear it. I'm Eugene Doyle, and I want to thank Anjuli Pandavar, Andy Linton, and Marco Alexander. And I want to thank you for joining us tonight on this special edition of the GreenZone Conversations with Eugene Doyle. And we are going to be back on next Sunday at 7 p.m. Irish time for another edition of the GreenZone. But again, to Anjuli, Andy, and Marco, thank you indeed for joining in this debate tonight, and thank you for coming on the GreenZone. Thank you indeed. Okay, we're going to leave you there and say good night to you. Bye-bye.